Sorry, I couldn't unmute. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. My name is Claudia Figelman. I'm one of the account managers here on the education team for Visual Sound. Thank you for joining us. Today's webinar is providing assessments from a distance. Little bit of housekeeping. I already announced if everyone could go into the chat and give us your email address, it helps us to capture who's actually attending these webinars. Also, if you have a colleague that is not receiving our emails, please feel free to share. This link is going to be up, and as some of you already heard, we're going to be up and conducting these webinars through the remainder of the spring. Keep coming back, and we will continue to update the schedule. It will probably remain 3 webinars during the week with Corey's asked me anything office hours. But again, please make sure that your colleagues are aware of this. We're happy to share and happy to provide the service. Corey Freed, who is our education consultant, will be leading our webinar, and I'm going to take it over. Oh, and this webinar is being recorded. The recordings are archived on our website, the same web page, that remote learning web page that you use to log on to the call. If you scroll down at the bottom, there's a link to our YouTube channel, which has all of the webinars. Corey, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Claudia. Welcome, everyone. As Claudia mentioned, today's topic is called Providing Assessments from a Distance. So I want to start a little differently than my previous webinars. I want to get some feedback from all of you. So I would like if you could take a moment and in the chat box, can you please write down what do you consider to be a meaningful assessment? We all know what assessments are, but what makes them meaningful to you as a teacher or to your students as students? And I see fair and reliable information, drive instruction, timely, comprehension, critical thinking, gauge learning. I'm noticing a trend. Did you notice not a single person answered standardized tests and multiple choice? Take new knowledge, internalize it, and apply it to situations presented to them. Students actually understand the material. So this is the reason I kind of want to start with this question, because it's going to lead to my next slide, which is a favorite quote of mine. If your students can Google the answer, you may be asking the wrong questions. You all just pointed out those wonderful facts. We're talking about the fact that students, yes, memorization is part of learning, but students are using the material. They have to figure out how to comprehend it, not just regurgitate it. And that's the key to a meaningful assessment. The key to the assessment is making sure your students are actually understanding it, not just memorizing and reciting. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about a couple of different types of assessments. And yes, I do have tests on there as well, because while multiple choice tests are not the greatest form of assessment, they are a very common one. So I want to show you some special stuff with that. And then we're going to look at some other types of assessments that from a distance you can do with your students, because not every student's going to have the same equipment in their house. Not every student's going to have the same accessibility. So we want to make sure that we are providing fair assessments to reach all of our students. So what are some of those external factors? I just mentioned not every student's going to have the exact same stuff at home. So the access to technology. Many school districts are currently providing computers for their students at home, but that doesn't necessarily mean the students are going to have internet access. If you are in the Philadelphia region, I know that Xfinity has opened up their free Wi-Fi and the signal is strong enough that it is reaching most houses. But if you're in the suburbs or you're in a rural area, that free Wi-Fi might not be accessible to those students. So the access to the technology is going to be different for every student. Family members. We all know that we have students that might be babysitting their younger siblings or helping their parents around the house, all of those type of things. So just because the student's at home doesn't mean that they have the time and the same availability as their classmates. You also have to worry about the quality of the background for video and audio. As you know, many people, it's been a running thing right now that many people don't want to turn their cameras on for Zoom calls and Google Meets and all of that because they don't want their peers to see the environment they live in. Maybe they have a very small house, or maybe it's messy, or maybe they just haven't combed their hair today. Whatever the reason being, they might not want to have a video recording in their home. Physical space, that goes again with the background, and then craft supplies. If you're giving your students a project where maybe you say, build something and take a picture of it to submit, they might not have access to construction paper or glue. Even basic things like computer paper and scissors might be difficult for some students. So these are all factors that we need to consider when designing the assessments. So now we're going to talk about the type of assessments for distance learning. As I said, you might have kids make posters and then take a picture of it to submit, or they can make a digital poster using different resources. They might make videos, presentations. There's all different things that these students can make. Writing assignments, larger projects. Maybe you're going to have them do a science fair from home and they have to do the experiment, but instead of having a trifold board and setting it up in your school's cafeteria, they're going to make a Google presentation slide or a Flipgrid video for the results of their science fair project. So all of these type of things can be done from a distance learning. There's just slight modifications that you have to consider when building out these resources. The first one we're going to talk about is the most popular one for quizzes, and that is Google Forms. Besides Google Forms, if your school district is a Microsoft district, you can also use Microsoft Forms, which works in a similar method, except instead of going to Google Sheets, it would go to Microsoft Excel. So when you are doing Google Forms for quizzes, and I am going to take you out into Google Forms from my presentation here to show you this in real time, you would go into the settings and select Make a Quiz. Now, this is my number one piece of advice that I always give to teachers when they're doing these multiple choice Google Forms. When you are creating your answer choice, I always say, make the correct answer A. The reason for this is when you click on the three dots to get to the menu, there is an option that says Shuffle Option Order. When you hit Shuffle Option Order, every time your student turns on that quiz, it is going to shuffle the answers and put them in a random order. How many times as teachers do you create a multiple choice test and you start questioning, how many times did I put the answer C? Do I have the answer B too many times? Am I having a pattern? By doing the shuffle option orders, it's going to be computer generated and you don't have to worry about that repetitive answer choice and thinking about which answer to put where. So that's the reason why I always recommend answer choice A, shuffle options. It makes it just much easier for you as the teacher to create the quiz. The next thing with Google Forms for quizzes is advanced responses. After you turn something to your students, you might want them, yes, they want to see their grade, but they need feedback. They need to know what they got wrong, how they got it wrong, and what they can do differently next time. So that's where this feedback comes in. And as you can notice in the feedback, there is an option that says add answer feedback when you're in the answer key. And when you do that, you will see both an option for an incorrect answer and a correct answer. This then lets you type feedback, add a link, or add a YouTube video. When you do this, the students will not see the feedback as they are taking their quiz. After they hit submit and they click see responses, when they see their grade, they will also see the feedback on each individual question. So this is really good so they can go back and review, learn things, and find out more information afterwards about how they can improve those answers. The next type of assessment I'm going to talk about is Flipgrid. And if you haven't used Flipgrid yet, it is a great resource for videos. And as the teacher, you would set it up so you can set the students to have a time limit anywhere from 15 seconds to 10 minutes, depending on the type of assignment you're doing. If you are doing that science fair, share out your projects, you might do the 10-minute limit. If you are doing, for example, if you're a Spanish teacher and you just want the students to count to 10 in Spanish so you can hear their pronunciation, You don't need 10 minutes. You can do 30 seconds. So there's all different time limits and there's all of that type of stuff. In the settings, the teachers can set it to moderate before making the video public. This way, you can see the student's video, grade the student's video, and the students aren't going to actually see each other's unless you as the teacher make it public. I apologize. I thought I had a second slide for Flipgrid on here. When you are in Flipgrid, actually, I do know it is on the feedback slide. So if I go ahead to my feedback slide for a moment, and then we'll go backwards. On the feedback slide, just to show you, this is what Flipgrid's feedback would look like. So as the teacher, you can give them a performance grade, a grade on their ideas, and then you can leave them comments. This is all private feedback. So your students are not going to see what you tell each other. So student A won't see the feedback to student B. All right, so the last type of assessment that we're going to talk about during today's webinar is choice boards. And the reason why I really like choice boards for that virtual distance learning assessment is because you want to be able to give your students the ability to, like I said, they might not all have the same resources at home. So you want to give them the ability to pick the assignments that are going to help them improve. So the most common choice board is the tic-tac-toe board. Normally, you would put the most important project that you want every student to complete as the center square, and then tell them they just have to make a tic-tac-toe. Some other options to change it up on you a little bit. This one right here is a demonstration of a baseball choice board. And what you would do is each assignment is worth a certain type of run. So you have your singles, your doubles, your triples, and they have to score 2 home runs. So they can do, for example, a home run assignment and 4 singles, or they could do like 3 triples. So it's basically they get to look at the assignments and they get to decide which assignment is best for them and the materials they have in their homes. Same thing with this one here. It's themed a little differently as a menu. So the students would have to create an appetizer, an entree, a dessert, all different types of things to create a full meal. So those are just some samples of choice boards. On the resource page that I have provided, I've sent you some links to different, and I'm going to post that in the chat again just in case you missed it. But in those resources, you would be able to see the types of assignments you can give. So as you see in the tic-tac-toe board, it says like draw a picture of the main character, perform a play that shows the conclusion of a story. So on the resources, I have given you a list of some ideas and some links to websites that have great ideas. I personally have a book that I purchased when I was an undergrad called Differentiating Instruction with Menus, and it is filled with a lot of great assignment ideas. I don't necessarily recommend going out and buying a book because the internet is full of resources. However, the Differentiating Instruction with Menus is a great series, and they have them for every subject area. So if you were looking for a resource specific to you, that's an option that you can look at. So the last slide we're going to look at before we move on to actually looking at Google Forms and Flipgrid is how feedback matters. You give your students an assignment, even when you're in the physical classroom. If you never tell them how they can improve or what they did wrong, it's not going to be meaningful. And we know that the feedback is what really matters when it comes to assessments. So there are a couple of different ways you can do feedback. You have your traditional rubric, which we've all seen and we've all done. Then we have, this is what's called a 1-point rubric. And this is my favorite one for remote learning, especially because a lot of schools are not mandating grades right now. Most schools, if they are doing grading at all, it's going to be a pass-fail type of situation. So the 1-point rubric, you legitimately just have, here is what you need to accomplish as the student. And then the teacher can give areas for feedback. I'm sorry, I just heard someone speak. What was that?
It's my video.
Is someone trying to ask a question before I continue?
You may continue.
Oh, okay. So the areas for improvement are things that the student might need to fix. And the evidence for exceeding the standard is what did they do good? What did they do well? I know personally that knowing what they did positively is the best thing for students, because if you focus on negative, then the students are going to just kind of like shut down and freeze up a little bit. So make sure that you are focusing on those positives. Yes, there always is going to be those areas for the improvement, but try to give them at least 2 positives for every 1 negative. The other form of feedback that I wanted to point out is instantaneous feedback. So if your students are writing essays and stuff, you can log into their Google Doc when they have it attached to Google Classroom, and you can give them feedback as they go along. So you can just highlight a passage of their essay and write comments. Like you could say something like, check your grammar, or should this be capitalized? Maybe you can write to them and say, do you have a source for this fact? Any type of feedback while they're working. Because if you wait until they're done and you give them back that feedback that says, what's your source, or did you check grammar, and it's 3 weeks down the line, that project's passed in the kids' mind. The kids are done with it. To them, it's like, I'm not going to look at it. But if you're giving them that feedback as they're working, they are going to be able to grow and improve even more. So I am going to come out of this right now, and we are now going to look at Google Classroom, because I want to show you the Google quizzes and how you can create those for those students immediately. If you notice, I have 2 Google tabs open right now. The one on the left is the student view, and the one on the right is the teacher view. The way that you can tell the difference is the teacher has a grades in their menu, and also the teacher has the class code in their heading. So as the teacher, I would go into classwork, and where it says create, I can create a quiz assessment. Now, you can also pre-create your Google form. It doesn't have to be done within Classroom. It's just Classroom has that option available to you to make things a little easier. So once you open that up, I'm going to just call this demo quiz, and then you click on the blank quiz that it automatically created for you. You can title your quiz however you want to title it. And then you're ready to get started. Just like any other Google form, you do have your menu on the right. So if you have questions from a previous quiz that you've done, you can import those. You can create your own questions. Within Google Forms, you have options of the type of questions you're creating. So you can do multiple choice. Check boxes is where there's multiple correct answers. You could do a pull down menu. You could also do linear scales, multiple choice grids, and check boxes. These ones you're going to have to play around with a little bit because sometimes they're not really that great for quizzes. Those are more for surveys and feedback forms like that. You could also do your short answer questions and your paragraphs. So now I'm going to just put a sample question, and we're going to put some answer choices. Once you have your answer choices in there, you would click on the answer key, change the point value to what kind of question you want, and then select the correct answer. Once you select the correct answer, you're going to see the check mark right next to it. Then you have your answer feedback. So here I can go for the correct answers, and I could leave them way to go. And I can go to the incorrect answer, and I could say something like that. Then for this video, obviously my question said, what color is the sky? But I can go, if I was a math teacher and they had a graphing question wrong, I can go in and search for a YouTube video on graphing, and I could attach that as the feedback so they can now go watch that little tutorial. I'm going to just put a video of clouds because obviously the question was the sky. So here is a video called The Science of Clouds. We attach that. And now if the student gets it wrong, they are able to watch that video. George just asked in the chat box if the answer is always A. The correct answer doesn't always have to be A. I recommended that I personally like to make the answer choice A just because it's a little easier and it doesn't take as much thinking on the teacher part. When you're done leaving that feedback, if you are, George, making all the answers A, the last step is to click on the 3 dots And when you open up your menu, you're going to click Shuffle Option Order. So now if I go preview this quiz, just to show you how that works, you'll notice it says what color is the sky, and it's green, yellow, blue, red. If I refresh it, now it's in a different order. So that is why I recommend that shuffle, because now you don't have to think about which answer choice you made. If you always make the answer choice A, the computer will shuffle it for you. So you just said, where is the shuffle? So once again, when you're making your question, you're going to click on the 3 dots on the bottom, and you are going to click Shuffle Option Order. Now, if you are making this Google form in Google Drive instead of in Classroom, you have to actually enable the quiz features. So to do that, you would go up here to Settings. And when you're in your settings, just like on the screenshot I had during my presentation, you would go to the quiz icon and you would click the Make a Quiz. Now, this locked mode for Chromebooks, this is something that only would work if you are using school-owned Chromebooks with school-owned accounts. So when you're working from remote, it's not necessarily something you need to turn on. It's something when you're in your school, though, you might be interested in. The other things in this settings, while I have it open, is the releasing of the grades. If you do the immediately release after submission, as soon as your kids hit submit, it's going to give them the link that says see results. Once they do that, if you have these boxes checked, they can see what they missed, what the correct answer is, and the point value. Does it shuffle differently for different students? So the answer choice is going to randomly shuffle every time the quiz is opened. So even if the same student, like let's say you open the quiz now, and then you decide, you know what, I'm not submitting answers right now, I'm going to go study some more and then take it, it'll shuffle differently the second time they open it. So in a sense, yes, it's different for every student, but it could theoretically be different for the same student. You're very welcome. Speaking about that though, there is another advanced feature to shuffle the question order that I didn't show you yet, but yes, the one that I showed you with the triple dots is just the answer choices. So if you go to presentation, that's where you would get the shuffle question order. And then the other thing is under general. If you click the limit to 1 response, the students can't take the quiz a second time. If you allow the students to take the quiz a second time, you as the teacher can see their results. So if they take it and they see, oh, I got a 7 out of 10, they can go research, study, however they're going to prepare and take it a second time. That's up to you as the teacher if you're going to allow them to submit multiple times. Again, we talked about that meaningful assessments being growth and learn and seeing what the students know. So if you want to allow them to grow, that is the option to just leave limit to 1 response unchecked, and they can take it a second time. The presentation is again where you would get the shuffle question orders. You could also give them a custom message for the end. So after they hit submit, it normally just says your response has been recorded, but you can change that to say whatever you want it to say. So someone just said shuffle's already been done. So there's 2 different types of shuffles. Shuffle 1 is the question and shuffle 2 is the answer. So if you want them both to shuffle, you would need to have both the shuffle question order checked, and then when you go to these triple dots, the shuffle option order checked. Now, the last thing I want to show you in creating questions really quickly is the fact that if you notice, there is an add image option. So you could add an image for the question and you can add images for the options. So let's say that you are a preschool teacher and you're doing colors. You could ask like what color, which box is red, and then you could add options. So you can go to a Google search and say like red box. And there you have a picture of red. And you can go add option 2 is yellow, option 3, whatever you want it to be. So I'm just going to add 2 so that way I can show you the demo of how that would work. So we added a red and a yellow box. I go to my answer key. Oops, I went to an extra answer. I go to my answer key. I select red as the correct answer. I click done. Now when I preview that, just so you can see, it says which box is red, and it shows them a red and a yellow option. They click on the red box. So you can do pictures the same way that you do words. This is also good if you're a science teacher. You can insert, for example, in the question, you can do something like which arrow points to the nucleus. And then you can pull up a picture of a cell that has arrows labeling it. And obviously, if you were going to do this, you would probably make your own image so that it says ABC, not the actual words. But you can then input the image, and now the image is in the question. And then you scroll down and you put the answer as like arrow A, arrow or arrow 1, arrow 2, etc. So you can use those pictures in both the questions and the answer choices. You can also do short answers and longer answers. If you are doing short answers, just know that the Google quiz won't grade it automatically. It can only grade multiple choice. Kim, I appreciate that you have to go to another meeting. This is being recorded, so if you want to watch the rest of it, please feel free. George, to answer your question of where is the preview, it is the little eyeball. You click the eyeball and it will open the quiz in a separate tab so you can preview what you did. It is now 12 o'clock. I did go a little bit over because I like to normally have time for question and answers, but I was showing you all the Google Form stuff. If you have any questions, you can feel free to type them in the chat box or come off of mute. I can also show Flipgrid if you would like to stick around for that, but like I said, we did go a little bit over the time. For some reason, you can't see the grid, it's just your picture. When you say you can't see the grid, you mean in the Google Meet or in a Google Form? Okay, here on the training. If you're not seeing my presentation slide, it is pinned, so it should be the larger of the images. For the person that just asked about seeing this presentation again or reviewing the other ones, I am posting the links again. The resource page is where everything is located. It has videos, it has the slide decks, and it has other resources. The webinar schedule, if you scroll down to the bottom, it does have the, I'm losing my train of thought. It does have the link to the YouTube channel. So Alex is interested in Flipgrid, so I have no problem doing a little bit more on Flipgrid for people who are sticking around if anyone else is interested in Flipgrid. So when you go into Flipgrid, you would click Educator Login or Educator Sign Up, and you would just do Login with Google. I love the tic-tac-toe menu board. Yes, the tic-tac-toe menu board is great. So what you would do is you would add a new grid for each class. You only need one grid per class. So for example, if I click add a new grid, I would call this webinar, whatever. And then where it says who can join. Student emails is what you would want to do. A good quiz platform for entering math equations. Betsy, that would be, I would say if you're going to use like the Google form, you can do that by putting an image of your question and then just having the image as the question. Another good quiz platform for math questions, I would have to think of more specific examples. Do you want the students to be able to write out equations? Do you want to just see like their handwriting, like you give them the problem and they handwrite out the response? What kind of, oh, and someone else just responded, Equato is great for math equations. I love the collaborativeness of everyone helping each other. It's so wonderful to see. But if you give a little more detail of what you're trying to accomplish, I could help you find the best tool for that. So So again, with the Flipgrid, obviously, if you are doing this with your students, you're going to do school email. That way they just click the login with Google option. So now it says add your school email. For example, if you're teaching at Visual Sound School District, not that we're a school district, but you would just type at visualsound.com, hit enter, and now any email address that is like, for example, my email address is cfreed@visualsound.com. If you had a student and their email address was like abc@visualsound.com, as long as it ends with that at your school, they are able to access your quizzes, your Flipgrids. So then you click next and your stuff is ready. So now you go to your grid. This is where you can make those questions. So it always defaults and sets up a say hello. But as the teacher, you can click add new topic. And this is where you would create your project. So let's say you're a Spanish teacher. You can tell the students count to 10 in Spanish. And then under the prompt, you can write something like bonus points if you have visuals. Set the recording time. Like I said, you can go anywhere from 15 seconds all the way down to 10 minutes. So Betsy, you want both questions and answers to have equations. I could definitely look up some resources for you and make some suggestions on that. I would say you're probably going to want to do something that has a whiteboard type feature. So that way the kids can actually write. Do your students have touch screens? That would be the next question to determine the best method of helping you with that for math questions. All right, so once like I said, you could set your recording time, your little prompt, and then you just click create topic. You're all set now. And as you can see, you have a topic called count to 10 in Spanish. If I go back to my main class, you'll see that that say hello on Flipgrid, which is the default, is still there. But now there's an assignment that says count to 10 in Spanish. The students would come into the question. They would have to log in. So even though I'm already logged in, it's going to ask me to log in again. Once I log in, I see this nice little plus sign. I click on the plus sign and I just realized it was going to turn my camera on. I don't want it to do that right now because I did not do my hair this morning. But so you would turn on the camera and then it would just record and you can count. It also gives you a whiteboard option. It gives a screen sharing option. So even if your students didn't want to record their video and see themselves on the video, they can actually select they can actually select to do a screen share, and then they could show, maybe they made a Google slide with 1, 2, 3, and they could show counting the pieces on the screen. Should I delete the say hello on Flipgrid? That is a choice up to you. A lot of teachers like to leave that so that their students can kind of practice how Flipgrid works, kind of like a little bit of a playground. The other thing that I would like to show you is when you are creating that new topic. So if I go back to my teacher grid and I create a topic, when I scroll down, there's an option that says more options. This is where I can provide additional stuff and also set some other restrictions. So that video moderation means that the videos won't go live until the teacher approves them. Then you also have student-to-student replies. If you're doing, for example, book club, your first student can give a little like summary about Harry Potter, and then another student can respond and go, I loved Harry Potter, but oh my goodness, if Hermione didn't stop correcting the guys or whatever. So they can kind of have a back to forth with the videos, but it's asynchronous because unlike a Google Meet or Microsoft Teams, they're responding on their own time, not necessarily in the room at the same time talking. You could also change the status, so you can make something hidden. That way you can kind of, as a teacher, set up 5 or 6 videos that you're planning to ask the students to do, and then make them live later on. So you could have them all set up. All right. And then launch and freeze dates. If you want specific, I want the kids only to be posting videos between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. on Tuesday. Right here, you can set the start and the end. Video editing, attachments. Again, these are all just things that you as the teacher can decide in those advanced options. And then the feedback, you can either give custom, which lets you set up a rubric for the videos, or basic, which is what I showed you the screenshot of before that just has little text box that you can give feedback. So you just wrote, they all have Chromebooks for the math. So I am definitely going to look up some answers for you. I believe you gave me your email address earlier in the chat. So when I find some answers of things that might work, I will send you an email with those options. Richard just responded, the premium version of Equato integrates Google Forms. It accepts input via text, voice, handwriting. Oh, that is awesome, Richard. Thank you so much for sharing this resource. So that's a good one. I believe I haven't personally used it, but Richard it sounds like it's awesome. So it's something I'm definitely going to be looking up for you guys so that maybe we can do a future webinar on it. Any other questions about Flipgrid, Google Forms, anything we talked about, rubrics, all the different things that might help you with creating assignments for students? You are very welcome. I appreciate everyone for coming today. Thank you so much for giving us your time. I do have office hours every day, like Claudia mentioned. So if you have specific questions or you want a little more one-on-one with any of these tools, please feel free to stop in during the office hours and I am here to help you out. It's all for the kids.